Hey folks, this week we're talking about the start to April with one package to rule them all. More news on the Steam survey. Then there's GNOME and KDE Plasma Wayland benchmarking. Jeff has some notes about Kubuntu 2504 beta. And we talk about Firefox and Thunderbird getting some big updates. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 197, recorded Saturday, April the 5th. You Linux fool. Hey folks, it is another wonderful Saturday, although it's a little bit cold here, but we're going to put the cool weather to the side and we're going to celebrate some Linux. It is the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to geek out over open source, the Linux desktop, all kinds of fun stuff. It's going to be a great show. It is not just me. We've got the full crew, the regulars here. Rob, Ken, and Jeff are with us, and it is now April, and our first story is sort of about that. We're going to let Rob kick it off. And why does one package have anything to do with April?
Well, it's time for those April releases. And one big complaint people often have about Linux is the fragmentation. You got Debian with your devs and the apt, and Red Hat with your RPMs and Yum and DNF and Arch and all those packages. It's all over the place. So the fix, they made a fix, was to come up with a universal package manager. And that's what they did. In fact, now we have at least 3 that I know of: AppImage, Flatpak, and Snaps, with the Canonical's beloved Snaps. Because that's, we need to have a universal package manager. Well, we got 3. So still not ideal. There's good news. As Abhishek says, mark this date as I reveal the most shocking development since Linus Torvalds smiled at a conference. So at the Linux One conference this week in April, at the end of March, April, whenever it was, I don't know. The Linux community has agreed to adopt a single package manager called One Package. And some quotes from the story. Mark Shuttleworth, founder of Canonical, appeared visibly disoriented when asked about abandoning Snaps. He says, quote, "I feel strange, like thousands of forum complaints suddenly went silent." Linux creator Linus Torvalds issued his typical measured response. It's about expletive time. Now we could focus on what really matters, telling people their code is garbage, but constructively. The roadmap expects full adoption around 2055 or whenever they get to it, it says, but that's what's on the roadmap. But you know what else happened around the world? The start of April. And if you haven't figured it out yet, this was an April Fool's joke brought to us by the IT FOSS or It's FOSS folks. So I hope you figured it out maybe a little quicker than I did, actually. I skimmed. And I'm like, wait, what did I just read? I tried to figure out, what are they even talking about? How come? I was confused. I then checked the internet. I'm like, well, I always look for supporting information for my stories. I try not to go just off of one person's word on things. And I found some links similar, like .1 package formats that someone wasn't able to open in Windows. I didn't even dig into it because I'm like, I don't care. I'm not looking at Windows. It's got to be something else. And I really couldn't find much out there. Then I noticed the date on the article was April 1st, and that's when it all hit me. So this is your annual warning for any news you read out there this week. Check the date and always view anything released on April 1st or around it with a bit of skepticism. So with that said, April Fools.
I like the continuation of the article. It is, we're looking forward to the unified desktop, GDE or GNOME.
That was taking it too far. Plus, I got to add, when I was confused about it, I had not read that part either. That part would have had to have been a giveaway. Of course, maybe it also been a giveaway.
Actually, the link I posted in the Discord chat also gave it away.
Of course.
Because it starts off, a little humor doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah. No, this is fun. Like I've always enjoyed most of the April Fool's stuff, and it seems like the internet sort of let us down this year. Not very much April Fool's stuff going on. We had this one. This one was good.
Nothing came out on the first except this article.
Yeah, I know. Everybody was kind of done with the April Fool's thing, I guess. But like I have very fond memories of, say, the old ThinkGeek. Who remembers ThinkGeek being a thing? The old ThinkGeek site coming out with their new April Fool's products. And other sites have done it, but ThinkGeek is really the one that comes to mind. And then the thing that's the best is like some of their products people legitimately wanted, and there was more than one ThinkGeek product that became a real product that started as an April Fool's joke.
I mean, that's exactly what this is. This is a product people want, right? We don't want the fourth universal package manager, though, which is what it would be.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. It's the XKCD comic, right? And I posted that too. It's comic 927. Situation. There are 14 competing standards. 14. How ridiculous! We need to redevelop one universal standard. Next thing you know, situation. There are 15 competing standards. It's just what happens every time. Every time. So, what is next? Next, we have, speaking of GNOME and GDE, Jeff has a story about Wayland on these. What's up with Wayland? What's new with Wayland?
Well, and I will first preface this saying you might not see my lips move because my camera froze, but luckily you've got a decent picture and the audio still works.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. There's a reason behind this, but it's the third story, so you're going to have to wait a little bit. But Michael Arable over at Phoronix is known for his extensive benchmarking, but we don't always get the chance to cover everything he publishes. Last week, for example, he tested GNOME 48 and KDE Plasma 6.3 for gaming performance on Ubuntu 25.04. After reviewing the article, I decided not to cover it because the results showed GNOME and KDE on Wayland were nearly identical in performance, and KDE had a slight statistical edge, but nothing significant. While it was notable, what was notable, however, was that KDE and GNOME on Wayland outperformed their X11 variants. Well, the KDE variant. In fact, GNOME couldn't even run properly under X11 for proper benchmarking. But KDE was slower under X11 than Wayland. Now, that brings us to this week's article, linked in the show notes. Some of Michael's readers speculated that the Wayland advantage in GNOME and KDE might come from these desktops neglecting X11 optimizations or simply being too bloated. So Michael decided to test a couple more desktop environments, and in this latest benchmarking roundup, he added XFCE 4.20 and LXQT 2.1, both running on X11. Now, this week's article presents combined data, so the Wayland and X11 results for GNOME and KDE from last week, and then adds in the X11 performance of XFCE 4.20 and LXQT 2.1. Now, these desktops are the latest available packages for Ubuntu 25.04. And these tests were conducted on the same hardware as last week, a Ryzen 9 9900X3D processor paired with a Radeon RX 7900 XTX GPU. And of course, like I said, the system was running Ubuntu 25.04 with Linux kernel 6.14 and Mesa 25.0.1 for the graphics driver. Now let's talk results, because they may not be what you expected. The fastest desktops were KDE Plasma 6.3.3 on Wayland, followed very closely by GNOME 48 on Wayland. When comparing X11 environments, KDE, LXQT, and XFCE performed at about the same level. Interestingly, KDE, I think, even appeared slightly faster than the two lightweight desktops. Now, keep in mind, however, the differences across all environments were minimal, so small, in fact, that users wouldn't notice any impact on daily performance, and some of the results may even fall within the margin of error. There was one clear takeaway, though, when comparing Wayland versus X11 on the game Strange Brigade. Wayland demonstrated a significantly better performance over X11. Now, I'm just going to note here that was the one standout. The rest were very, very close. I don't know what was going on with Strange Brigade, why it ran away on Wayland versus X11, but just take note of that. So what's the bottom line? Some might say KDE and GNOME are bloated, but they hold their own or even outperform lighter desktop environments. Mm-hmm. And side note, I have seen some data showing that they're not really that much lighter than KDE or GNOME. Yeah. My advice, pick the desktop that feels right to you, because performance differences are negligible in everyday use. So happy desktop hunting.
Yeah. I'm curious about one thing with this, and that is the version of Wine he was using. Did it have the native Wayland stuff in it, or was Wine running into X Wayland and then into Wayland? I'm not sure. I didn't see that in the article.
I don't know, but
because at least some of the games he was benchmarking were running on Wine.
Yeah.
So
those lower end or lighter desktops, what they would probably say is, of course, KDE and GNOME is going to be faster. I mean, if we were using that much memory too, we'd be faster.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure there's some way to spin it, but
well, I think you should buy more memory. Buy all the memory you can afford.
And then Micron memory.
Yeah.
Brought to you by. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's not get that rumor started. Oh my
Here's a question I have. Was he using the minimum memory required for testing these?
Oh, probably not. I'm sure he's got a rig with a bunch of memory on it.
Yeah, it was like 62 or 34. I forget what. It was quite a bit of memory. It was not the minimum. It was at least 32.
Yeah, so you may run into those lighter weight desktops. They may actually perform better with less memory. That might be a thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, now that you say it like that, that's probably way more than maybe XFC could even use. So maybe if they were more on like all on 8 or 16, maybe it would have been maybe XFC would have performed better on the comparatively on the lower memory.
Try going down to 4 gigabytes of memory.
I haven't done that for like a decade. This is 2025.
Yeah, I don't have anything that old that would have that low of memory.
You know what's really sad is you go to the usual places and they're still selling laptops and desktops with 4 gigs of memory. It's like, it's really not enough these days. Your browser uses that much by itself, doesn't it?
Especially if it's Chrome.
But all right, so Ken has a story about that other browser out there, not Chrome or Chromium, but Firefox. What's new with Firefox?
Well, actually, going to give you a bit of old and new, because I've actually got 2 articles about Firefox. The first is a blog post by Jennifer, and I do apologize if I mispronounced the last name. I'm going to say Boskaski, about how we can help improve Firefox through Mozilla Connect. Now, Mozilla Connect launched in 2022, where Firefox users and builders could share ideas, feedback, and feature requests. Now, before Mozilla Connect, there was a platform called, does anybody remember Ideas at Mozilla?
No, not really.
Well, people could submit suggestions, but the tool wasn't set up for honest interactive dialogue. According to John Sidaway, and here I am quoting him, we needed something better, a place where people could not only share ideas, but also get updates, participate in discussions, and feel they were heard. Right after Mozilla Connect launched, users jumped in with some big requests: vertical tabs, tab groups, and better ways to manage profiles. Fast forward to today, all three are either being built or already starting to roll out. Mozilla Connect becomes a tool for every phase of the product cycle, from exploring ideas to testing prototypes to validating decisions. The second article comes from Marius Nestor. Marius writes about Mozilla promoting Firefox 138 to the beta channel for public testing. It looks like a smaller update promising only support for copying links for background tabs using the tab strip context menu on Linux and Mac OS systems, as well as an improved address and credit card autofill feature that better handles dynamically updated forms. Firefox 138 beta adds more tab grouping features, such as add tabs to new tab group and remove from group right-click tab menu entries. It also promises to revamp the previous color settings into contrast control settings, allowing users to use the same colors across websites for improved readability. If you feel adventurous, and this is for you, Jeff, then try Firefox 138 beta and provide your feedback via Mozilla Connect. I've got links in the show notes for both of these articles.
Interesting stuff.
I could be on it. I got a lot of betas running right now. It's showing.
Yeah.
Just stay away from alpha.
Well, sometimes that Venn diagram, everything, those lines blur a little.
If you're looking for an alpha, you could be running the Cosmic Desktop, the whole thing already.
You could be. I'm trying to. I don't see it in here. I think Firefox 138 may actually ship with a hidden option. So you've got to go into the flags. Be able to turn on HDR for some of the Linux desktops. That may actually be a thing that's landed now. It's obviously still very much in progress. I've been messing with it with the nightly.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
I'm only on 137 right now.
For Firefox, I'm 137. I'd have to look and see what I've got for Chromium that I'm currently running, since the latest update to Chrome broke the OBS virtual camera usage.
Yeah, that's very weird. I got to dig into that and figure out what's going on with that. I will eventually get hit by that too when we got to defloss next week. But I'm sure there's a way to get it back.
Figure out what's going on with Firefox and the OBS virtual camera.
I would assume that it's the same thing.
I'm guessing there's probably some security. Yeah,
maybe the virtual the virtual camera plugin though is a Linux thing, and it just shows up as an extra like V4L2 device. So that seems a little odd. What we really need is OBS to get on board and actually give us Pipewire outputs. But we're not there yet.
Not with 31.0.3.
Yeah, I know there are people working on it. But it's not there quite yet. All right, well, let's move along to the Steam survey. Rob, I remember about a month ago, the sky was falling. There were hardly any Linux users. We were back under 2%. What happened? We have the rest of the story now, right?
Yeah, so this month on the Linux Steam survey, it's gone back on its trajectory, inching closer to my 2025 prediction, which was 2.5%. And my stretch goal, which we'll see, we still have many months to get there, was 3%. This month, we have a new record on Linux on Steam at 2.33%. So as Jonathan hinted at, this number goes up and down all the time. It's the trend that you really got to pay attention to. because last month there was a 0.61% drop. And then this month there's a 0.88% increase. So anybody who's plotted things out on graphs, it's the trend that you got to look at. Those individual plots are just data points. So, digging into these numbers, it's a lot of the same. Sales of the Valve Steam Deck clearly help these numbers, with about 35% of these Linux users, or Linux gamers, I guess, appearing to be running Steam OS. And since the Steam OS isn't released for users to officially install, people have figured out ways, but it's not officially out there, so there's probably not many people doing it. So most of these that we're looking at are probably actually Steam Deck users. So 35% of those are likely to do a Steam Deck. But the Steam, another thing on there, the Steam Deck being based on AMD also boosts the AMD over Intel numbers, with 70% of the survey users using AMD and 30% Intel approximately. There's the point stuff here and there, but keep voting on the survey, because no matter what distro you're using, Steam OS, even if these are 50% Steam Deck, as we always like to point out, what is good for the Steam Deck and gaming on Linux is really good for all of us Linux users, because it's only going to help bring developers and improve things further for us in the whole ecosystem. So vote. This is one place I don't want you paranoid penguins to be hoarding or afraid to share that data. Let them know you're here for all of us.
That's great. Yeah, the Steam survey has always been a little weird, right? So you get things will happen. Something will change in the way they count or in what machines get counted. There's been things like they do re-images. So in Asia, they have the net cafes, right, where you can rent a desktop for an hour. And apparently a bunch of those had some system where they re-imaged every time. And that resulted in the Steam survey happening a lot for those devices. We had something sort of in that same ballpark this time, where there was like a 20.8% increase in the simplified Chinese language. Yeah. And, so maybe that's a change was made in the Great Firewall, letting more of these machines talk to the internet. It's hard to say, but whatever it is, it seems to have been rolled back, and we're back into the numbers, into the ballpark that we expected.
Yeah, and also, as I said, you got to look at the trends, because the survey it's random. So statistically, at least over time, it should kind of show you where things are at. But also, it really, it's luck of the draw. So it could be 1 month just more Windows users in a ratio get it than Linux. Overall, it should balance out. But
yeah, you figure and so here's one of the things about this, right? We do not have very good visibility into the Steam survey, but you figure that the more respondents, like the overall, the bigger the numbers are, the more the noise floor drops, and you get better data out of it. It's just kind of the way statistics work.
Well, the one piece of missing information we don't have is absolute numbers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? We don't know how many survey respondents there were altogether, and if we knew that, then we would have a better idea of what's going on. Like, so you see 20% more simplified Chinese. Well, was there 20,000 more survey respondents? We don't know. We just can't. So we're sort of reading the tea leaves, trying to figure all this out.
I think like once a quarter, once a year, once half a year or something, they should just make sure everybody gets it, because it's been a long time since I've seen the survey. I bet it's been close to 2 years since I've seen the survey even.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah, that could be useful.
And in the past, I've had it like once and then again, just maybe a month or two later.
But basically, you can say there's a 7 out of every 300 Steam clients that are Linux or own Linux.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and the AMD, just side note too, the AMD numbers don't hurt because not only all the Steam Deck, and we've got future Steam Decks Steam-like decks coming.
Steam machines? Are we calling them Steam machines this time around? I don't remember.
Or Steam machines, Steam-like decks, something. I mean, all those
Steam lights.
Yeah.
Consoles, PCs, handhelds that are going to be running Steam OS.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Well, at least handhelds.
Steam OS deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't hurt that AMD is kind of running away with the video card sales right now.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, their processors are flying off the shelf, too.
It'd be a good time to own AMD stock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although apparently it's a good time to own NVIDIA stock, too, for different reasons. But anyway.
Especially if you'd bought it 10 years ago.
Oh, well, I mean, that's the best time to buy any stock.
Yeah.
Every stock that's around today, the best time to buy it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
When nobody had any money.
Yeah.
That's how that works. Oh,
like,
man.
but every one of them, you can.
I have distinct memories of thinking, oh, man, this Bitcoin thing is great. I wish I had $100 to be able to buy one of them.
Yeah. Well, it's back then you didn't know.
Well,
I mean, with every stock.
Well,
yeah.
Not so much to buy it, but to mine it.
Yeah,
they would have been more than $100 to be able to buy in and get a miner rig. But no, I was aware of it and I thought it was the coolest thing before many people really started before you could buy dedicated miners, right? And so
15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
But the whole problem is, even if I remember when it was like $2 a coin, all right, I bought, $100 worth. Hey, it went up to where my investment's now worth $500. I more than doubled it. I'm going to sell, it's
Yeah, yep, that's true. And I guess that's really the same thing with stocks. You don't know how high it's going to go. Nobody knew that eventually an individual Bitcoin is going to be worth $100,000. So really the way to do it was to buy it when it was nothing and then forget about it. And 20 years later, rediscover the hard drive and pray that it still works.
Yeah, but then you forget too long and it's worth nothing again.
Yeah.
Or you end up just losing it completely because it goes bankrupt.
Yep.
We shall see if that ever happens. If Bitcoin is the long-term tulip or if it's going to stick around. No clue. All right, let's move on to speaking of Valve and the Steam Deck. Was that an attempt at a segue that I totally missed?
Not for me.
Anyway, Jeff is also going to continue this Valve-centric conversation and talk about the Steam client.
Yeah, Steam released a client update on April 1st, and no, it wasn't an April Fool's joke. They even made a point to clarify that this update was necessary to fix a display issue on the game details page for titles with queued updates. So ideally, they wouldn't have released it on April 1st, but a patch was needed. Beyond that fix, this update brings some great improvements for everyone, especially Linux users. For Linux users, download speeds have been improved, meaning games and the Steam client itself should install faster. Valve has also enhanced the accuracy of download progress and time estimates. So the more you use Steam, the better these estimations will become. Additionally, the consistency and clarity of the download install update UI has improved. And also byte counts refer specifically to the number of bytes to download. Progress bars and percentages now reflect the overall progress of an install or update, which includes covering the work before, during, and after the download. So it takes into account all the disk usage and everything else. The exception is the top blue progress bar on the downloads page, which shows the bytes downloaded. And I should mention that part of the more you use it, the more accurate it's going to be. They're looking at having a previous data, and it's going to keep, so it learns your system, learns your network, so it can better estimate over how your system and network reacts over time. Time remaining estimates apply to the entire installation update process now. And again, it's just learning on your system. In another fix is if you encountered the rare issue where non-Steam Proton versions, such as Proton Glorious Egg Roll, were incorrectly assigned the wrong compatibility tool, this update should resolve that. But that was pretty rare, but it got fixed. Another Linux-specific fix addresses the initial positioning of drop-down menus, and the UI no longer incorrectly applies compatibility tool filtering to shortcuts. This update also resolved issues such as notifications displaying incorrectly in certain games, and the update news window being obscured by the Steam client at startup. Now, I had that one. It would pop up that, the little news window with, oh, here's the latest sales or whatever. Mm-hmm. They would always hide it behind. So that has been fixed. There are additional fixes for remote play, Steam input, and the Find Friends Who Play feature. But for the full breakdown, check the article linked in the show notes, where they also have links to the official Steam announcement. So happy gaming.
Very cool. I'll have to make sure and go grab that and then run through my series of tests for the various fancy things that I try to do with Steam and see how many of them work. There have been things that historically you have to go into what do they call it? The Steam Compositor. I forget what they call it. It's what runs on Steam Deck. You can boot directly to it. And I can't remember. There's a name for it. It's just totally escaped me at the moment. Anyway, there's some fancy things that you can do in Steam on Linux. You've got to like go directly into that and not have KDE or GNOME running underneath it. But they have been, slowly over time working towards making all those things work with the regular desktop managers. Very, very brave of them to do an April 1st release, though.
Yeah, and they specifically, made sure to note that no, this is not a joke in any way.
But
what was that, Ken?
I was just thinking about the fact that yesterday I did the update to the Steam client.
Oh,
and it did load up quick. I turned around to get a drink and back, and it was already done.
Cool. Very cool. All right, Ken, you've got a story here about another Linux distro that I have never heard of. What is it? Nitrix?
Yes.
What is this?
I thought we'd covered it. It's been a while. I can't even remember what episode off the top of my head.
I was going to say, just the fact that we've talked about it here doesn't mean that I'm going to have any memory of it.
True. Sometimes I have trouble remembering what we talked on the previous episode.
Yep.
But I can thank Marius Nestor, since he wrote about Nitrix developer Yuri Herrera's recent announcement. He released the latest ISO snapshot of Nitrix. In this case, it's 3.9.1. Now, Nitrix is a Debian-based, immutable, and systemd-free GNU Linux distribution using a highly customized KDE Plasma desktop environment by default. Nitrix 3.9.1 introduces Linux kernel 6.13.8, a huge MauiKit, MauiKit Frameworks, and Maui Apps update, the latest Mesa 25 graphics stack, AMD ROCm open software stack, and a new convergent web browser called, I'm pronouncing it Fury. It's Fiery. Now, Fury uses a Qt web engine and was built using MauiKit. The release announcement includes some of Fury's known issues and missing features, including how to close the browser. Apparently, the X at the top of the screen doesn't close it.
It's the VI of browsers.
Now, Nitrix 3.9.1 still uses the KDE Plasma 5.27.11 desktop environment, while updating some KDE Frameworks packages to version 6.8.0 and the Qt components to version 6.7.2. It's running right on the edge, isn't it? The Nitrix Update Tool System, or NUTS upgrade utility has been updated to version 2.2.2. You got to love that acronym. How would you pronounce that? Nuts? If you want more details, check out Marius's article. It even has a link to the release announcement, so you can see how to close that browser.
I'm trying to figure out what the Fiery browser is. Apparently, so Google searching finds it as like a Google app or an Android app.
I found I ended up getting more information by using the link on the Marius's article.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Is it just a reskin of Chromium?
Probably.
Does Chromium use a Qt web engine?
That's a complicated question. The answer is sort of. Is it Chromium a fork like multiple years ago of Conqueror, which probably is based on the Qt web engine? Browser history is weird. Just FYI.
I think it is a fork of that.
I know Chromium is a fork of Conqueror or I don't know if it was called Conqueror, but it was the KDE web browser from years ago. Yes. I just don't know if that means it's based on the Qt engine these days.
I was getting confused with Firefox, which kind of has different Netscape, but
yeah, but there's a bit of a gap in there because they got so far with the Netscape code, went this is garbage, and then redid it.
That's what Windows did too. They got to Windows 8, said this is garbage, and kind of went back to Windows 7 like code.
I mean, that's kind of what happened with Windows. Not ME, the one after ME, Vista.
Yeah,
maybe.
No, it went ME XP. And then it went XP.
Yeah, it was XP,
and then it went Vista.
Yeah, XP was based on the NT, whereas ME was based on the Windows 3.1 code.
Yeah, XP was the first consumer one based on NT.
Yeah. That was a weird rabbit trail to go down. Anyway,
how do we get on Windows?
I have no idea. So, I do have some interesting stuff in here about Fiery. Apparently, it is their browser. It does not have a plug-in system. It's based on Qt web engine. I'm gonna have to look into this a little bit more. The whole idea of a new web browser just always intrigues me because so much of the world runs on Chromium, And so when someone says we've got our own web browser, it's like, it's a reskin of Chromium, right? So to have one that's not is just very fascinating.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's having a new web engine that would be fascinating. There's many skins around other web engines.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, I remember Steve Gibson talking about it and just saying part of the problem is the web code is so complex. It's kind of haphazardly grown over the years that to fully be compliant with today, all the web standards, it is so hard that's why most people don't write their own engine.
But there's at least one new engine.
Ladybird. There's Ladybird and there's Servo. Those are the two that I'm aware of.
They're not new either, but new in web engine terms.
Mm-hmm. Ladybird is pretty fascinating. We did an interview with the guy behind it, whose name I can't remember at the moment. Back on Floss Weekly, Andreas King. That's right. Back on Floss Weekly several months ago. Very, very interesting project there.
Since all your videos have been freezing today, I changed my background to kind of match.
We'll get the rest of the story on that here in just a minute. All right. So Rob, is it the time? Is this the year for big updates to package managers? Right? Because we have DNF 5, which is amazing, by the way, and now we've got APT 3.
Yeah, everyone seems to be hitting major milestones over this last year with their package managers. But unlike one package, this isn't an April Fool's joke. So the Debian project has released apt 3.0 this week with a nice new visual features. Visual features on a command line, you say? Well, I'm not talking about TUI, but there is still quite a bit you can do to make command line output look better, with APT 3.0 providing a new, concise, and well laid out command line output so when you're updating, installing, or removing packages via the terminal emulator. So with that, new features including things like column display that will make it easier for users to scan for a package name, new color support for removal or red for removal, and green for all other changes. So you can, more quickly at a glance, just take a look and kind of see what's going on instead of just all this scrolling past you. There's also a smoother install progress bar that uses Unicode blocks. And like I said, scrolling all the stuff going on, this APT 3.0 is now less verbose and offers more padding to make it easier to separate sections and extract the relevant information. And then there's also a new solver. So using the -- solver option, so this new solver, it allows apt to fall back to non-candidate versions and makes auto remove more aggressive, keeping only the strongest automatically installed packages. So Debian users who are really looking forward to this can expect to see APT 3.0 as a default in the upcoming Debian Linux 13 or Trixie operating system, which is due out in June or July, around there, 2025. But if you want it even sooner, be an Ubuntu user, because Ubuntu 20.05 is expected to have that, which is also expected to release later this month. And also, I feel like I tried out a beta of this, but maybe it was DNU 5 or something, but I feel like I've seen this already before, this announcement, and demoed it, but maybe not. Either way, I can't remember. So me being refreshed, looking at it again, it looks pretty slick, because I am a Ubuntu user on my servers, so they're still on 22.04. But if I decide to upgrade them to, I like to keep it on LTS, so I guess I don't know. I probably won't see it for a little bit, but it still looks pretty nice.
Interesting. I'm very interested by their new solver. I found I will add this blog post to the show notes, where apparently one of the devs is talking about what exactly it means that there's a new solver, and it is the code that manages dependencies and figures out what needs to get installed to satisfy all your dependencies. And as you might, like, if you think about that for a little while, that's not a trivial problem, particularly when you have things like 3 or 4. A single dependency could potentially be provided by different packages, right? And that gets really, really complicated. And trying to sort all of that out to where it does indeed give the user the choice that they should have, and not give them a choice when they should not have one, can be really difficult. So,
well, a good example would be something that takes maybe FFmpeg, and then it takes a specific version of libc, and then libc has got libraries it's based on, and it just, you could many deep. Or
are you looking at like the Debian version of libc or the Ubuntu version?
That's going to be libc. One of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Or so something we see in Fedora quite a bit is you can install, I think FFmpeg is available from the Fedora repositories, but there's a bunch of the codecs that are disabled because of patent issues. And then you can go get other versions of FFmpeg, install them with DNF. And then so you might have multiple potential installs of FFmpeg. So how do you sort out which one you need? How do you do updates when that's the issue? So
circular dependencies.
Circular dependencies, yes.
I always forget that you can also install deb packages with apt. So they would be in that bundle.
Yep. So cool stuff in there. I like
it. Bless you.
Thank you.
I hope you're not having the same problem Steve Langsett Linkus had, who this latest version is being dedicated to.
I hope not. I don't want anything dedicated to me yet. Not like that.
Maybe in another 50 years. But
Yeah.
70.
So one more thing I'll point out, like if you want to, there is a side-by-side screenshot at the top of the linked article. And I've got to admit, like the new apt 3 output is way better than the apt 2 output. Much easier to look at and understand what's going on.
It's very similar to the output from Nala.
Yeah, we won't need Nala anymore.
Maybe.
I mean, you think about it, and like that is the sort of the ultimate win, if you would. Like, oh well, a package or a program, an application became irrelevant because all of its best features got pulled in by the one it was trying to replace.
Well, it's basically acting as a front end.
Yeah, a wrapper just to make it prettier for you. And well, now it's pretty enough all by itself.
Exactly.
But it doesn't replace top grade.
All right, let's talk about Jeff continuing to freeze.
Well, I shouldn't now.
He's good now.
Yeah.
So what's going on, man? We teased this all throughout the show.
You have to work more on your timing. This is when it should have froze.
Yeah.
Well, I had to kill OBS because it was it just was dying on me. And if you notice, my screen I look a little different. I seem a little choppier because I'm going only through Restream. So but we got some movement. I'm at least partially running here.
Yeah.
But astute listeners of last week's show will recall that I talked about updating to the Kubuntu 25.04 beta. Since I really like the KDE desktop, and this version comes with Plasma 6.3 and Wayland updates, I wanted to give it a try and share my experience. Well, it didn't go quite as smoothly as I had hoped. So I originally planned to format and reinstall my operating system, but at the last minute, I decided to try an inline upgrade, just see how it would go. My plan was just do an upgrade now, and when the official release came out, redo the desktop. Because, just because of the show and because I enjoy experimenting. I thought, what the heck, I'll throw caution to the wind, And I played around with all sorts of alpha and beta software, downloaded a ton of different things, and generally caused chaos on my system. That's why I was going to reformat and reload. So, and I should note, any stability issues I run into are frankly 99% my fault. So if you stick to normal software and packages, Linux distributions tend to be rock solid overall. So I fired up the terminal, ran update desktop -d. It saw there was a new version available, proceeded with the installation. Everything seemed to go well until reboot time. Upon restarting, I was greeted with a grub command line prompt, which I found really odd. A bit of Googling told me I needed to type exit, which would drop me out of the command line and into the normal grub menu. From there, I could proceed. Odd, but okay. Next, I reached a login screen, though something seemed very off. There was a session drop-down in the upper left-hand corner that I couldn't interact with. And below that, my username and password field, I could find that. But when I tried entering my password, a massive tablet-sized virtual keyboard appeared. So it covered about 3/4 of my screen. And while I could type my password, I couldn't actually press any enter or go anywhere from there. Well, thinking maybe something hadn't booted up correctly, I restarted my system, hoping a second reboot would fix things. Because, I have had that happen in the past. Unfortunately, I ended up back at the same spot. Just to make sure nothing was stuck, I did a full power down and reboot. But then again, same result. Well, then I thought it was an issue with the Novu driver, because I've had issues in the past. So I dropped to a command line prompt, installed the NVIDIA drivers, reboot, no luck. At this point, I figured something must have gone wrong. After all, it is a beta. So using another machine, I downloaded the ISO, put it on a Ventoy USB stick, and proceeded with a full format and fresh install of the operating system. And I decided to be adventurous. I selected full install with updates enabled during installation. everything seemed fine until at the very end when I got an apt can't execute error, which was odd. Long story short, it was completely borked, totally broken, and wouldn't boot. So I started to wonder, am I going to have to go back to 24.10 and wait for some fixes to land? I did another clean install, this time without enabling updates during the installation, and I selected the normal install. I figured that would at least give me a solid base, and this time everything came up fine. And it was fine from then on out. So what happened? First, the grub issue. Turns out this one was on me. I have another drive where I've experimented with different operating systems and done a ton of installs. Somewhere along the way, my BIOS was set to boot from that drive first, which also had a grub instance on it.
Oops.
Well, that drive had an old Gen 2 install, but I tinkered with it until I broke it and unknowingly corrupted grub in the process. Once I pointed the BIOS to the correct drive, everything worked fine. So what would happen is it would go in there, grub was broken, you hit exit, it then would fall through the tree to the next grub instance, which was on the other drive, which worked fine. So that's why hitting exit worked. It took me out of that grub and into the proper one. I also spoke with someone who works with the Kubuntu maintainers and discovered that having Steam installed can wipe out the Kubuntu desktop. And that's exactly what happened during my upgrade from the existing OS. They told me that dropping to the console and running sudo space app space install space Kubuntu -desktop fixes it. Now, the team is actively working on resolving this issue, and as of today, it might already be fixed. This was about 3 days ago when I did this, so it's probably already fixed. But if you happen to run into this, that's what you need to know. And just for context, removing Kubuntu -desktop package removes both SDDM and all the KDE packages. So that explains why my desktop essentially disappeared. The second issue was related to enabling updates during installation. When you do this, the kernel gets updated, but the correct image file doesn't land in the /boot/EFI directory, leading to a kernel panic at boot. There's already a bug report on this, and developers are working on a fix, which again may already be done. The good news is that all my issues have been reported. They're either already fixed or actively being worked on. And that said, I do want to set expectations. This is beta software. Now, while the last few releases have been surprisingly stable, usually installing and working perfectly, running beta means there's always the possibility of running into hiccups like these. Ideally, if you're testing beta releases, you're pretty comfortable with Linux, and reinstalling or dropping to a command line isn't a big deal. So the recap, I hope it helps anyone out there who's testing Kubuntu 25.04 beta. I'm coming at you right now from the 25.04 beta, and I did have in the notes, so far it's solid. And, well, not everything is solid. It has fixed some little graphical glitches that I had on 24.10 with Wayland. So that was good. So it has been improved. 6.3 so far is mostly good. One final note on beta, you are going to get updates, and a lot of them every day. So be aware that if you decide you want to try beta, keep on top of the updates as they pound out a lot of fixes at a pretty fast rate. So, happy upgrading if that's your desire.
I think my servers might be waiting for the LTS, like I hinted at just earlier.
That's probably a good idea for your server.
Waiting for 2604.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be running servers on a beta. That just
well, I wasn't going to do it on the beta, but even the final release of 25.04 is expected to be out pretty soon already. So,
but yeah, I need to look at upgrading the one I'm using as a file server from 2004 to 2204.
It's about time.
Why not 24.04, since that's the most recent LTS?
I just want to see if it'll even run 2204.
It's also a valid question whether Ubuntu supports jumping that many versions. I know I'm sure they support going from one LTS to the next, but skipping an LTS in the middle and jumping 4 years, that's a lot.
You can't. You've got to do it sequentially.
Yeah, that's the way most of them work.
But you can get there.
I found that out when I was trying to upgrade from 1204 to 1604 after I duplicated to another computer.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago, though.
Yeah.
Don't remind me.
That was a decade ago almost.
Oh, ouch. All right.
Maybe it's maybe you did it a few years after 1604 came out.
So Jeff, are you having enough problems with Kubuntu that we're going to convince you to try Fedora KDE?
Not yet.
Or regular old Ubuntu with GNOME.
But definitely
I would go Fedora before I went regular Ubuntu. But I tried I forget which one it was, 41 or whatever. And it was solid. The biggest thing is just learning the package manager.
Mm-hmm.
But I do definitely recommend installing Chromium.
I run Firefox 99% of the time.
Yeah.
Other than doing this show, I don't use Chromium.
That's why I say install Chromium just for this show. Get away from Chrome. That way you don't have that OBS virtual cam issue.
I think it was OBS that was freezing, not Chrome.
In my case, all I had to do was launch Chromium, and I was able to get it to work. So that
even with that high-end system you have, Jeff, I mean, I imagine you must have a ridiculous amount of memory and just like the top-end CPU.
Last gen CPU.
Well, that's pretty good compared to the stuff I get.
All right, save us from this measuring contest, and let's talk about Mozilla Thunderbird's new release. Ken, what's new in Thunderbird?
Well, let's ask Marius Nestor. And when I did, he wrote about the latest release of the open source email calendar, address book, chat, and news client. Yes, that's Mozilla Thunderbird 137.
Chat?
Yes, chat and news client.
Huh.
Now, it doesn't introduce any new features apart from a splash screen to encourage users to donate to help keep Thunderbird's development alive. Now, if Thunderbird is your daily email driver, please consider supporting it. This release disables the system tray icon in Linux systems until it gains functionality and adds support for using file names when storing mail folders on Windows systems. Thunderbird 137 fixes RSS feeds to let users use the spacebar to scroll the message like it does in emails. It also fixes missing edit menu entries when selecting the group header in the grouped by sort view, improves the threaded search view to update correctly when the results are sorted by date, and addresses an issue with in-app notifications failing to display correctly when using the high contrast mode. Starting with this release, Mozilla Thunderbird 137 is also now possible to cross-post news articles if news groups are on different servers. That'll be nice. Some visual and user experience improvements have been added as well, along with other bug and security fixes. Since I have only highlighted some of the changes, I do recommend reading Marius' article for more details. And again, if you can afford it, please donate.
All right, what's this chat feature you're talking about?
It's got some chat in Thunderbird.
Who do you chat with? I mean, is it only with other Thunderbird users, or do they have their own protocol?
Depends on whatever chat service you're set up with.
So it's got support for IRC, Jabber, so the XMPP. It used to work with Google Talk. I don't think it does anymore because Google changed the way that works.
Is it still around, Google Talk?
I mean, Google Chat, but it's their own sort of proprietary format to do it. But yeah, there's some instant messaging support inside of Thunderbird.
Okay, so it's not their own; it's just a client for other.
Right. I mean, I would imagine though that Mozilla has a server somewhere.
It may even work with Mozilla Connect.
It might.
You know, one other thing you mentioned on there was the removal of the system tray icon, which for a second there I was like upset for a second, and then I realized, 10, 15 years ago I would have been upset because I always liked things like mail in my system tray because I could quickly see how many. But then I kind of realized I don't use that anymore. I don't have anything in my system tray. I don't really even like that anymore. But there was a time when I liked things like the mail client, at least chat clients in the system tray, just so I can quickly see. But I guess for a second there, I was a little upset about that. But thinking about it, I'm not anymore.
Yeah. So there's one outstanding feature that Thunderbird, I don't think it has yet. I know they are working on it, and that is being able to use Thunderbird with Exchange, with the native Exchange protocol. It's getting there, but I don't think it's ready for prime time yet. When I talked with the Thunderbird guys on Floss again a few weeks ago, this was their big outstanding to do, and it was like they knew they had to get this done if they wanted Thunderbird to be really usable, especially in the business world.
139.
I wonder, and I don't, maybe nobody knows, but is the Exchange, I don't know, API or whatever open enough for Thunderbird to utilize and connect to, or do they have to kind of hack it to make it work?
I believe they had to reverse engineer it, I think.
Better word, reverse engineer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do a little Googling and find some things like blog.thunderbird.net has a story from about this time last year talking about trying to bring it in. They're building it in Rust. Their Exchange support is built in Rust, interestingly enough.
I'm not aware of any third-party ones that really have consistently at least worked with Exchange over the years. Even Windows' own built-in Windows 10 mail client, I think only relatively recently started to support it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they do.
Yep. It's coming.
It's too bad, but I guess they don't want, it's too bad that there's not just an open, here's how you work with our systems, but that kind of would eat away at their higher end licenses, possibly.
I want to say actually that they've gotten a little bit of support from Microsoft on this, like not officially, but I'd have to go back and listen to the episode where I talked to the guy about it. But I believe they've gotten some patches sent in by Microsoft folks, if I remember correctly.
By some of their engineers that want to use Thunderbird?
Something, yeah, basically. Yeah.
Then again, I say it would eat into their own, which it would probably eat into their own apps, their own Outlook that you had to pay extra for if you're on 365. But they've kind of already started doing that with their own Windows. I could say 10, but I guess that's 11 is their more current one with the built-in app. So, if they're already doing it, might as well let someone else do it.
Actually, isn't Microsoft wanting you to go with the web-based version of 365?
I'm sure they want you to.
That they don't have to pay. You don't have to pay extra for that, though. That just comes with the lowest tier of Office 365. I'm sure they'd much rather have the paid Outlook tiers.
So if you want to use Exchange on Thunderbird, you have to use a beta or daily build. And then you can, you can go in. Exchange mail support is enabled by default, starting with the July 11, 2024 build of version 130 on daily builds. So go in for a daily or a beta.
Must still be kind of not ready for prime time if it's been in the beta for that long and not in the release.
I mean, it is an extremely complicated thing to add this new, not entirely well documented email exchange format. So they don't want to roll it out broken, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
My fear is that Microsoft will change something and then it'll be broken again.
So yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Apparently, Microsoft has two different things. They call it like EWS and Flock. No, not Flock. I read and said the same thing I read and didn't mean to. Graph. Graph is what they call it. The EWS is getting replaced by Graph, and the Thunderbird support is for EWS. I don't know if they've started working on the Graph support or not yet. So yes, that is exactly the thing. But the other thing Microsoft tends to do is when they do a version rev of a protocol like that, they tend to just reuse things. And so that's just a few more things you have to add to it.
I mean, even using their own products, every year after year, their older unsupported products of Outlook get harder and harder to function with it.
They've got unsupported products?
Well, I mean, yes.
I thought everything had backwards compatibility built into it.
Well,
have you ever tried to get support for Microsoft products? They're kind of all unsupported.
Yeah, but I mean, like, they don't even have updates anymore for like Outlook 2013 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not true. You can find plenty of third parties that will support Microsoft.
My biggest fear is they're going to go to they're going to force the new Outlook or force web Outlook, because both of them are just so terrible.
Then it's obvious they will.
Yeah, I could rant for an hour on them. They're just all the things they don't support. They're broken. Their layout is horrible.
All right. Why don't you save that for your Windows show, okay?
You'd be better off going back and using Excite.
It's just a lot of profanity. That's all my Windows show would be. A lot of profanity.
Oh, you're talking about Windows Weekly.
All right, let's get into command line tips. Rob has it first, and Rob is talking about Flock. What is Flock?
What is Flock? So I was on my More Utils that I was doing, my More Utils series that I was going to do. And with that, I was going to do a tool called LCKDO. But this is being deprecated since the Util Linux package now has a program called Flock that does the same thing. So I decided to bounce over to Flock, kind of being in the vein of covering what things in the More Utils does. So Flock, or flock, or file lock, flock, it's a file lock. So it's used to lock a file. And this can be used in a script to lock a file, make sure multiple processes don't try to write to the file at the same time or corrupt things. So for those watching, I got on my screen, I have two console windows, or terminal windows I'm going to demonstrate here. The first one, I have flock space, just a random text file I made, space -- command space quotes sleep space 10 quotes. So what that does is it runs Flock on that file, and then it runs whatever command you have after it. So in this, I just have it sleeping for 10 seconds. And what that's going to do is, while whatever command you have in there is running, that file is going to be locked. Once that command stops running, the lock will get released. So I'm going to run that, and then I'm going to go over to the second one, which is the same thing, but it's going to echo lock is removed. So I have flock space, the file space -- command space quote echo space lock is removed quote. So that's going to demonstrate when that lock is up. So if I hit enter on this first one, and I go over to this next one, hit enter, well, nothing's happening because the first one's still running the sleep for 10 seconds. And the second one is waiting for that lock to be undone. So boom, right at the same time, you see the lock went away and then the second one came up. So now, just for example, if I run the second again, because it's not locked, I could just keep right on running that. So that is like the base way to do that, I mean, that's just a demo example, but you could do this in scripts. Now, there are other flags you can use. So if you use the -u flag, if I use that in the second one while it was locked, -u will unlock a file. So I could lock the file and then basically ignore the lock and just take it. Then there's also a -s, which will do a shared lock. So what this will do is, if I did the -s and it locks the file for write access, but it allows action to take place that's only going to read the file. Now, if it writes to the file, it's going to wait until the lock is free. And then there's also a -n, and that will just stop if the file is locked. So, for example, if I ran that first one locking the file, and the second one, if I had -n, it would go to run and see that the file is locked, and then it would just exit out and not run the program at all. So, obviously, not something you're going to run unless you're, I guess, maybe want to lock a file from other systems. But mostly you use this as a script to have locking control of files. So that way, you don't have all kinds of processes writing and messing things up. And, I could have used something like this years ago, long time ago. In my early days, I remember doing websites. I mean, I've done websites for years, but making a counter on a website. And this was before my MySQL days, I'm talking. So I didn't even have a database. And I would just have a flat text file that was basically a counter. And I don't know if you guys remember 25 years ago, all kinds of websites had visitor site counters on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have this text file, and I would find that if multiple things were visiting the site, sometimes it would hit that text file at the same time, and it would wind up resetting it back to 0, because basically I would read it and then add one to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if one was in the process of its action, the next site thing would come along. It's like, oh, nothing here. Okay, one. So obviously that's more specific to PHP that I'm talking about, and not a command line. But I could have executed it, or if there was something in PHP. But something like that in your scripts could be useful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But that was a big improvement, because before even the counter, Rob had to just sit there and watch the incoming traffic with a hand counter. Click, click, click. Progress.
I just went through the logs and I counted. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 visitors yesterday. Update the webpage.
Yeah. All right, Jeff. What is your apt related tip?
So I've got apt modernize sources. Now, this came around as part of my upgrade, and doing some of this because I, didn't update right away. I loaded the operating system, and then I went, okay, let me apt upgrade. Well, I ran across a message. It says, notice some sources can be modernized. Run apt modernize sources to do so. Well, what does that mean? Should you, shouldn't you? So basically, in January, Debian Unstable released a new source format. The sources, which mean the repositories we download our software from, went from a single line description to a multi-line description. So in your operating system, there's a text file, they call them lists, that describe the different repositories that your system will reach out to get the software and see if there's any updates and load them. And there's some information in there of what they are and what they support and things like that. Well, now it went to multi-line. The extremely oversimplified explanation is this format addresses the file length duplication, and machine parsability issues present in the one-line style format. So the first link in the show notes is a high-level view of using the apt modernize source command. It's got a bunch of different apt things in it of different commands and whatnot, but it's right towards the top. You'll see modernize sources is in there. Now, the second link in the show notes goes into deep details on the new format. Now, I should mention, though, that when I say deep, I don't mean hard to read. So if you've ever messed with sources lists, you'll easily be able to understand the new format and the reasoning. They also give examples of the new and old format so you can compare the differences. And I also used it to implement a fix to a message I was getting with the apt update command. So I just, at this point, I'm throwing caution to the wind, right? I run my apt modernize sources command. And then after that, every time I did an upgrade, I would get the following message. Notice, skipping acquire of configured file main/binary-i386/packages as repository, and then basically Google, Chrome/deb space stable in release doesn't support architecture i386. Which is just like it sounds. Chrome doesn't have an i386 package. So what did I do? In my /etc/app/sources.list.d directory, I edited this is what it's called, my google-chrome.sources file. And I added the line architectures:AMD64. That removed the message I was seeing because now I said for Chrome to use only the AMD64 architecture and don't try to pull in any others. So now the message I was getting before wasn't an issue other than it bothered my OCD. So I didn't have to fix it. Don't have to go in there. It's nothing bad. It's just saying, hey, Chrome doesn't support more than one architecture. So I wanted anybody else to also would have that OCD going, I want to get rid of this messaging. This is the fix. And the second article, because it lists all the different flags and options in there, will help you fix any issues you're going to have. So be aware, this is coming for anyone on Debian-based that has a Debian-based distribution. So it will be coming whenever as things trickle down and SID becomes, or the unstable becomes stable. I guess not SID, but it's eventually going to hit all the regular non-beta distributions.
Yeah, very interesting. Good to know. You figure that when it's a non-beta update, that the update script is going to take care of that for folks?
I don't know, because maybe it, like in this case, it just didn't specify an architecture for Chrome because certain things still take the i386 libraries. And albeit it's not a lot, but because they didn't specify it, it still tries to grab it in there because I have the i386 set, because I think it either pulls it in because of Steam or because of Wine. One of the two is still
makes sense.
Pulling those.
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah, or both. Could be.
And that's why it was just confused. If I didn't have that, I don't think I'd ever see that message, and I'd never even noted. Well, I guess I would still get the message to modernize. It just wouldn't have thrown the can't pull.
Yeah. All right. Good to know about. Ken, what is PW-dot? And also, what is dot?
Well, let me go ahead and explain PW-dot first. That's Pipewire's .graph dump command. We talked about PW-dump a couple of episodes ago. But today we're going to talk about PW-dot. And it's got a few commands to it.
You mirrored. Your screenshots are mirrored.
Yes, it is.
Let's see. There we go. I fixed it for you. I got it. I got
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
But PW dot will create a file that you would put a .dot after, and it contains basically a script that could be used by a graphics command, .dot, to create a ping file. So that's why I'm covering both of them today. With my command line, I'm starting off by showing you the PW dot, the standards, the -H, the -- version, and there is the -R, of course, in case you want to work with a remote daemon. But with PW dot, I'm not going to worry about that since I'm having too much fun with the local Pipewire daemon. Now, the next command that I do is I just ran PW dot with no flags. And what it does by default with no flags is create a pw.dot file. And as I said, that's just a script of commands that the graphic layout program .dot uses. It's in the .dot language, in fact, which could become a whole another series of commands by itself.
Yes.
But when you run that, as I did here, it then turns around. With the .dot, I use a -T PNG to tell it that I want to create a .png file, then -O to give the output name of the file, in this case, pw.png. And then I list my working directory, and it shows that you've got the pw.dot and the pw.png. Now, what good is that .png for? If you've got a image editor, you can bring it up. GIMP would work. In this case, just for viewing, I use GwenView. And that lets me bring it up. And here I have the PW dot. And what you see is it shows all the nodes that my Pipewire instance has. So it's a quick way to do that. Now, you do have some other commands that you can use with the PW dot. I'm going to quickly run through those. One is for giving the output file that you want to go to. You do a PW-dot space -O. And in this case, I said space basic ...
Somebody had too much fun with that.
Yes, I did. And then again, I used that file as a name for the .dot command. And in this case, I changed it to the output file name to basic.png or basic.ping, which would really be confusing. And then I also use the -A command, which tells it to run for all the nodes. And I did it to a basic-all dot file and brought it out. And here's what the output of the those look like. This is showing the basic-all PNG. And you'll see there that I've got two other .png files in the folder that I'll be going over in a minute. So and here's the basic-all PNG with all the nodes. And you see there, it's showing, oh, I didn't With the screenshot, I didn't catch up to all the way to the far left, but it's showing all the nodes and how they connect with all the information, or to the different factories that were used to create certain adapters. And then I went and did use the basic the -D option along with the -O to get more detailed information. And there's all the detailed information. So it's a quick way to take a snapshot of your Pipewire instance so you can look into it to get the information you may need for reviewing certain things. And get back up here. There we go. And then, of course, there's another option that is -S or --smart. And that lets you just, it just looks and does anything that's got links to it. In this case, I was doing, ran VLC. Yep. This is without any thing linked, so there's nothing. Then I started VLC with some audio files playing, and that gave me this. And this one I'd called, looking back at the command line, VLC-smart ... And I'll put that to VLC-smart.ping just to keep it better. And you see, I've built up quite a few files in that folder just doing that. But here you've got the VLC media player. It's got the left and right audio outputs, showing those being linked to the left and right inputs of the audio sync, which in this case is maintained by ALSA's output. It's the HDMI stereo for my Sanyo TV. And it's a great way to do a snapshot, see what you've got when are playing around with different links to get information.
I find this super fascinating, and I played around with it a little bit myself while you were going through that, and I discovered something that it's not documented, but it works. So the -O, so for PW dot, the -O flag is where you tell it, this is the output file I want. You can use dash to send it to standard output. So PW dot -O dash, and it'll go to standard out. And then you can use the pipe redirector and pipe that into dot. And then you can then use something like -T xlib on my install, at least, to run it without saving anything to your local directory. It'll just generate it on the fly.
And show it on the screen in another application, or?
Yes. So it runs a little, I'm not sure what technically this is. It's GraphViz. Yeah. So it runs a GraphViz instance. It might be Dottie. I'm not sure.
I played around with that, but I didn't like the way it looked, and I had trouble managing the output file in it. So I prefer GwenView for myself. It's what you know.
Yeah. 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 The nice thing about this, though, is, like I said, it doesn't throw any extra files onto your file system. You can just
you can pipe that right into that frame buffer image viewer that I did probably a few months ago.
That's true. Yeah, I'm sure you could do that too. All kinds of fun stuff in there. All right, I've got a command line tip, and I've actually had quite a bit of fun with this just in the past couple of hours since I discovered it. I went looking through my lists of what command line tip, came up with trash. And this one is really fascinating. It is essentially, the name of the program is actually Trash-CLI, and it comes, when you install it, you get multiple commands for the command line, and it essentially lets you work with the graphical desktop's trash system from the command line. So it's the standard free desktop trash. And the whole idea there is when you delete something from your desktop, using your desktop environment, it doesn't actually delete the file in the same way that just an RM does. It moves it to the trash can. And we've probably all been there where we RM'd something and then realized moments later that we RM'd it up, as it were, messed up, and the thing that we deleted when you use RM is gone forever. So you can use trash instead of RM. Just trash by itself, trash and then a file name, will move a file to the trash can. And then there's things like trash list will show everything that's in there. Which unfortunately it's not sorted very well. There's a couple of outstanding feature requests in the Trash-CLI that I found, because you would think, it sorts them by the date you deleted it, or it sorts them by name. No, it doesn't do either of those. It just sort of randomly sorts them. So that's less than great. But there's also the ability to empty the trash-empty, or you can do trash-restore to be able to get a file back from the trash can. And so there's kind of two main use cases for this that I see. One is having a command line interface to be able to work with, your trash can from your desktop. So you've deleted something within your desktop environment, and you want to be able to look at that, maybe pull it into a script or automatically restore something like that. It's useful there, but I think it's also pretty useful to be able to trash files from the command line, and they're gone, quote unquote, but they're still in your trash can if you ever wanted to get them back. And so I think both of those are potentially pretty useful things, and it's available on both Fedora and my Pop! OS machine. So I think it's going to be pretty widely available just to install from your repositories.
What was it called?
Called in the
repository? Was it just trash or
Trash-CLI? I'm pretty sure that's what I installed to get it to working. On both Fedora and Pop! OS, you can just run the trash command, and if it's not installed, it will tell you, "Hey, do you want to install?"
Install Trash-CLI on Linux Mint.
Cool. Yeah, Trash-CLI.
2504 says it gives you the command sudo apt install Trash-CLI, so it's aware.
I'll just alias that to RM and never make that mistake again.
That's not a terrible idea. You could do that.
The flags won't be the same, but
yeah. Well, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. It may try to reuse some of the flags. I don't think there's many flags actually to trash itself.
Well, I guess they have the -r recursive, so I don't know how many other flags do I use with remove. That's like the only one.
Yeah, not many. And then it has a little note here that some of these are ignored for GNU RM compatibility. So like apparently that is a thing that people actually do, is alias RM to trash.
Just alias RM to trash-put.
You can just use trash by itself.
When I make a new distro, it's just going to automatically alias that, and that's going to be.
Actually, I bet trash is just pointing at trash-put, because it's giving me the exact same. So the help gives me the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, it's its own binary. Huh. Anyway, it's cool. Play with it. It's fun. Hopefully, it'll save you from accidentally deleting something that was actually important.
But how are you going to learn
if you
don't just totally trash your system every once in a while?
How are you going to learn to have backups?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not wrong, but
it's much better if you learn to have backups when you delete one file than when it's all gone.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. All right, it has been fun. I'm going to let each of the guys plug whatever they want to plug, get the last word in, and we're going to start with Mr. Rob Campbell.
All right. Just my usual. Come visit my website. Connect with me. Website's robertpcampbell.com. And on the website at the top, you can find links to my LinkedIn, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, and a nice little cup to donate me a cup of coffee in increments of $5.
Robert P. Campbell with the P in there.
ROBERTPCAMPBELL.com.
Robert P. Campbell, that's somebody else. He exists, but that's somebody else.
And we have had coffees donated to other members of the team through that site.
Indeed. Which we will eventually get paid our coffees.
Eventually.
All right, Ken.
Well, I'm just going to recommend to everybody, before you try any of those how-tos that were published April 1st, back up first.
Yes.
And since Rob stole my main one-liner that I was going to do, and that was April Fools from Foss Weekly.
There you go. All right, and Jeff.
One thing to say is I think Ken is right, and it is Chrome that's messing up because I had to totally shut it down and restart it because Chrome died on me. So, the wonders of beta. But Firefox works great, just saying. Nothing else other than a poem. Laptop had issues we knew. Exec started seeing a few. He can't place a ticket. Said that you bricked it. Won't fare well at your next review. Have a great week, everybody.
Oh, that hits a little too close to home. All right. Appreciate you guys. Oh, the penguin. The penguin. I have a Tux penguin. I have a Tux penguin from ThinkGeek, the old geek store of yore that is sadly no longer in existence. I need to get that out. Anyway, appreciate you guys being here. If you want more of me, there is, of course, Hackaday, and you may have seen a little bit of a penguin going by there because the Floss Weekly is actually in the slider there at the top of the page at the moment. So I've got Floss Weekly is there, and then also the security column goes live every Friday morning over at Hackaday. Make sure to follow there for your up-to-date security news. Mostly, well, a lot of it is Linux flavor, but not entirely. But other than that, we just appreciate everybody being here. And if you're not a part of Club TWiT, you should really think about it. It's about the price of a cup of coffee per month, and it's the way to support, to show you care. And we appreciate everybody that's there, watches and listens, both live and on the download. And we will see you next week on the Untitled Linux Show.
Hey, buddy, are you a geek? Are you a tech enthusiast? Then I would love to invite you to join a tech community like no other. You can gain exclusive access to our incomparable quality tech content for just $7 a month with Club TWiT. As a member, you'll enjoy all TWiT TV shows ad-free, plus access private video feeds for insider shows like iOS Today, Home Theater Geeks, and so much more. Dive into the members-only TWiT Plus bonus feed for behind-the-scenes content, club discussions, and special events. But here's the best perk. Join our incredible Discord community to watch live show productions, chat with hosts, and participate in exclusive members-only activities. It's your backstage pass to the world of TWiT. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or a lifelong learner, Club TWiT elevates your knowledge while entertaining your interests. Get 2 weeks free when you sign up now for $7 a month and unlock unparalleled access at twit.tv/clubtwit. That's twit.tv/clubtwit. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you and welcome to the club.